Welcome back to the 26th and Glencoe Media Network. I am your host, Marcus Flowers, aka Flo, aka Call Me What You Want. Just don't call me lazy. And today I am here to talk about the Batwing New 52 run. And I couldn't have spoken about this with the person who is more knowledgeable about DC than me. I have been following this gentleman for years. We've been in a few group chats together.
More than a few.
And seeing his growth just as a podcaster and him just becoming more comfortable with recording. I am here with none other than I'm here with none other than X the Exile. He is the co-host of the Black Variant RNC on the RNC Network. X, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. I'm so happy to be here. I've been waiting to do this for a very long time. The stars finally aligned. I'm glad to be here.
Right. It was interesting because when they released the photos of Batwing, because I've been in and out of. Have you been watching Batwoman this season? Like you was about to say, I've been in and out of it this season. So like the first season, I was out of it after like 3 episodes, and I was like, you know what, I'm cool. And then when they said, "Hey, the main character Ruby, she is leaving, and we're hiring a black actress," I was like, "Oh, okay, let me tap back in." So I finished the whole first season of Batwoman that's on HBO Max, and then I started to watch this second season. I was trying to do it weekly, but I just had so much on my plate, and I was like, let me just put this on the back burner for now. So I've definitely been in and out about it. What about you?
I tuned into the premiere. I've been keeping up what's going on, watching clips and whatnot. When they brought in Javisa Leslie, it literally just like re-sparked my interest in the whole show.
Right.
I've never been a Kate Kane person. I've never been a Batwoman person at all. She's been doing great though. She's been absolutely killing it. I remember when the show premiered, it was I think it was either the same time as the Super Bowl or something else was going on, football related, and a lot of people tried to slander the show. Right. I didn't like that shit. I didn't like that shit at all.
Right.
But the way it got renewed after 2 episodes within the season, that shows that at least the network has faith in her and everything the show's going on. The budget is getting up to, everything is good. I really hope people go watch that show. Black Lightning just ended, so we need a black comic book hero on TV.
Right. But how did you, I know this is a little bit off topic, how did you feel about just Black Lightning as a whole?
Me and Van talk about this a lot, actually. Just as a whole, you mean like just the TV show, the character?
The TV show.
The TV show. I think it's the most impactful show of the last decade outside of Arrow.
Really?
Because Arrow literally spawned an entire new era of comic book TV, from the Arrowverse, the CW-verse, to Daredevil, the action of how it was filmed. We literally pioneered a whole new era. With that being said, Black Lightning brought a lot of representation, unapologetic representation, on network television, and that's not something that we should take lightly at all. I know Twitter has a thing for CW shows, but Black Lightning was just a good show, period. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
If you got time to go binge it, it's on Netflix. All the seasons are on Netflix, at least to my recollection at the moment. Please go check it out. It's such a good show.
Yes. And just lastly, before we hop into this, let's just talk about how did you, 2 things. First, the first one, how did you get into reading comics?
So like our generation, millennials, we all grew up on Batman the animated series, right? We all grew up with Spider-Man, X-Men the animated series, etc., etc. When I was growing up, the movies that were coming out were, I think the last Batman franchise had just ended, so the X-Men movies were coming out, Spider-Man movies were coming out. When I got a little bit closer to my teenage years, the Dark Knight movies started coming out.
Right.
With all that, I've been a big superhero guy my entire life. My dad's a Trekkie, so I've been around nerd shit my entire life.
Okay.
So like, I think I bought my first comic book issue though. Like I want to say the February before the New 52 started.
Right.
Like I started right before the New 52. My first ever like graphic novel was Final Crisis. So yeah, I've been heavy into the shit since then. I've fallen off at times because adulthood, college, being broke. I couldn't afford issues at one point,
right?
But now that I got a little bit of money, I got a stable job and whatnot. I'm happy to be back in it. I'm happy to see there's such a community for it because honestly, like there's not a lot of people in real life who read comic books, or rather, no comic book shops still exist.
Right. And I'll just add with that, it's actually harder to find comic book shops just in general. Like even with like my main comic book shop, because of the pandemic, they shut down. And that was like 30 minutes away from me. And then the next closest one is like an hour and a half away. So it's just like they're becoming very scarce. And I remember back in the day, my first comic book, I didn't actually buy a comic book. I bought the graphic novel of the Fantastic Four. It was right when the first movie came out, and it was the Fantastic Four 50th anniversary graphic novel, and it was a silver book. And I bought that, and then my father was telling me how he used to be able to buy comic books at like the grocery store or like when he went to the drugstore. And to a person like me, I'm like, yo, that's like crazy that you could have just like gone anywhere to buy it. And so after that, I fell off again. But when Miles Morales started to appear in comics, that's when I really got back heavy in, because I was super excited about a Black Spider-Man. Spider-Man was my favorite superhero. And then from then, I would just go on to search for Black superheroes, and I stumbled across Batwing and this new 52 run. This was actually the second series that I actually bought back after Miles Morales's Ultimate Spider-Man run. So, so yeah, it was just really seeking out, like you said, seeking out representation. And at the time, I didn't really understand the concept of like comic book events such as like Final Crisis and Secret War and Dark Reign and all that. I just was interested in characters and their singular stories. So that's how I really got into comics. And of course, just like you, I've been going in and out, but I'm fully back in now, especially with Jonathan Hickman and his X-Men run, and Jason Aaron. They've been killing it with Avengers, and of course Ta-Nehisi Coates and Steve Rogers, with Steve Rogers and Black Panther. So I'm like fully firmly in. I've actually been reading Bloodshot as well through, I think it's Image, right? I've been reading the Bloodshot series as well.
Yeah, all those are absolutely phenomenal picks. Every single one of them. I don't know what it is, but like with comics, like everyone just comes in. It's kind of like wrestling. Like everyone just comes in and out. But like as long as you're there, man, that's all that matters. As long as you're pushing the culture forward, that's all that matters.
No, for sure. And lastly, you put this in the group chat how you were very you've been kind of mid on all of them, but Loki, you said you were very disappointed about that. Could you elaborate?
Loki feels like, first of all, Tom Hiddleston is really good as an actor, and he's actually really good as Loki. So let me start off with some positive things before I get really mean. Loki is a character who's been Loki's a side character in every medium, in everything. From Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes to goddamn the Thor movies, Avengers, he is a perpetual side character. He's like a good hand in wrestling. Like he knows how to make the good guys look really good. But by himself, Loki's kind of like a Weekend album. Like there's some points of levity in there, but ultimately it's like real depressing and a lot of violence. Loki as a show is kind of the same thing. The whole first episode is, first of all, it's a lot of flashbacks. I want to say a good 30 to 40% of the episode is just Avengers flashbacks, Thor flashbacks, Endgame, Infinity War, etc. And on top of that, it's this therapy session for Loki to kind of not redeem him, but to have a reconciliation of who he thinks he is and who he is, or what he actually is. And I feel like if you're going to have this whole big, therapy episode for him, what was the point of killing him in Infinity War where he was already at that point? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like the same thing for me when Thor lost his hammer in Ragnarok and then he got an axe in an Infinity War. What was the point of losing the hammer if you're just going to give him a bigger weapon? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. The axe wasn't as strong as the hammer, though.
It was supposedly a god killer or something like that, but like they never really got into how it is a god killer besides magic.
No, for sure.
But like Loki is a show I feel like I've seen the script and seen it play out in Tumblr forums 5 years ago. You know what I'm saying? It's a lot of fan service, which is not a bad thing. But like when it's this, I don't know, blatant. It feels insulting. It feels like I'm wasting my time because I know how this is going to end already.
Yeah, no, I feel you there. I think this is like you talked about how these shows are a lot of like fillers to the next big thing. I think this show is like, because I really liked Falcon and Winter Soldier and WandaVision, but I feel like this show is probably the first one that I feel like is just filler until like we get to that next phase. Like this is going to set up what's going to happen in the Eternals. Like we see already how the Infinity Stones don't really matter because like they have like a drawer full of them. So it's just like I feel where you're coming from. And also like I had to watch it twice just like to make sure I didn't miss anything because I feel like they were throwing a lot at me. But when I went for a rewatch, I was like, oh, they didn't throw a lot at me. I just had to like slow down and not look for things. And even just like, did you in the credits there was like he's always watching and it looked like a figure of Nightcrawler. Did you see that?
Yeah, a little bit. I thought it looked a little bit more like Nightmare, like Mephisto's son or whatever.
Yeah.
But that variance thing, well, like, and even with the Infinity Stones, like, I'm not super mad about that because like we both read like Hickman's Avengers and like the Fantastic Four, and like we know if Infinity Stones aren't in their respective universe, they're glorified paperweights,
right?
So I wasn't really mad about that, but like the variance thing, I'm interested in because what constitutes a variant? You know, do they think of other universes as variants? Do they think of what Earths are allowed to exist? What multiverses aren't allowed to exist? You know what I'm saying? I'm really interested in that perspective, but I can see that getting very messy. Only because Endgame was very messy, and that was like the most contained version of that so far.
No, for sure. How did you feel about the time travel explanation that they put in Loki?
Like
when they said, "Oh, that was supposed to happen."
When that was supposed to happen, I guess it kind of makes sense in that self-contained story. I'm not sure if the TVA is going to be a thing going forward or like a actual governing body and whatnot. But with like the time travel thing, like I figured they would be okay with things that would keep them in power, as it is with any corrupt police union. So I figure like the things they're probably going to be okay with is the things that keep like the Earthlings fighting like amongst themselves, like the universe fighting amongst themselves, instead of being like, hold up, why does like genocide happen every 3 months? Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, for sure. But yeah, no, let's jump right into Batwing New 52. So Batwing originally had its first appearance and he was created by Grant Morrison. But his first appearance was in Batman Incorporated #5, and he was designed by artist Chris Berman, but he was first drawn by Yanick Paquette.
I think Paquette. It's like Renee Young's last name too.
Thank you. So yes, and then Batwing went on to have. And the first Batwing was David Zavimbi. Yes. Zavimbi. And he was written by Judd Winnick. And as I was reading just the first few volumes of this series, because he was Batwing's in the whole series, he's in Africa, and he's like when he's Luke Fox, he's back and forth with Gotham and Africa. How did you feel? And I just did a little research on like Judd Winnick. How did you feel about Winnick's writing of David Zavimbi just off bat?
So Judd Winnick is like, to write a story about like a superhero in Africa, you have to be fairly progressive.
Right.
Judd Winnick is one of the more progressive writers of his time. Like he came up in the era of like the early 2000s. So like when Jeff Johns was doing his Teen Titans run and like the War Games era of Batman, like when Black Mask was taking over and stuff like that. He wrote a really long run on The Outsiders. And he wrote some stuff for Teen Titans too, around the death of Donna Troy. And his biggest accomplishment is Under the Red Hood.
Right.
Judd Winnick he's pretty good. And I mean, he's I'm not to lie to you or anything. He's a really good writer. I do think he gets a little, like, for his New 52 stuff, he gets more flack for the Catwoman thing.
Yeah.
Because the Catwoman book was just that was OD, man.
Yeah.
There's no other words for that. That was OD, man. But yeah, at least the first issue was good. The Massacre storyline, I guess. It was a lot of popping back and forth between that and Gotham. I mean, like, you weren't a superhero verse, so like time, like I guess flight times really don't matter. But that's a long flight, regardless.
Right.
Even if you got the latest in Wayne Tech innovation, that's at least a good 6 hours. You know what I'm saying? Right. But I thought the story was good. I thought the book is good. I'm kind of disappointed that they took it away from David eventually. Because I don't think Luke Fox has done much with the character, to be honest.
Right.
And that's not a knock against him. It's just like the writing hasn't been inspired enough for him to do anything. Like after this, Luke Fox gets in, and Luke Fox, we really don't see him until we see Gotham Knights, the James Tynion around James Tynion's detective run, and we really don't see him a lot after that either.
Yeah.
Like the most recent thing Luke Fox has been is the next Batman, and that's mostly because it's about his brother. You know what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
So the book is good. Judd Winnick is really good. I wish he wrote more, but like I think he's been retired for a couple years now. So
yeah, no, he's been at it since at least 1994 with the Real World San Francisco, and he was like a struggling writer. So he's been trying to like get on to be a cartoonist for a long time. So seeing this pay off for him was great. He actually spoke with HuffPost about his Batwing run. And I'm going to just read one of the quotes that he said. He said, "We have men in Africa that call themselves warlords who kidnap children and put guns in their hands and hop them up on meth and have them go kill people. These are the real guys." So we thought that combining the really over-the-top superhero elements along with the very established politicized environment of Africa can make for great storytelling. So just me personally, I like the run, but I do feel at times that it was OD with like the African warlords and the government being corrupt, and then the policemen being corrupt. Well, the whole police system being corrupt, and then you had Batwing trying to do the right thing as a police officer, but then people are turning on him. And then he had like two love interests, and Dawn, his childhood friend, turned out to be she like switched sides, and I was kind of getting like, yo, this is kind of like super intense.
Not to mention his long lost brother, who was the original villain.
And so when I was reading, and it's been a few years since I've read it, but when I was reading it earlier this week, just because when I first read it back in like 2013, I was like, oh man, who can Massacre be? Is it really the warlord? But now, like, having more experience in comics, it was like automatically I was like, oh, that's his brother right there. When they were fighting in Gotham, and he was like, oh, you're the warlord, Coffee, and he was like, no, I'm not. and he was so shocked. And I was like, why would he be shocked about that? Like, he's supposed to have like a genius level IQ, but couldn't decipher that his own brother may have been Massacre, who definitely, like, he would fit the profile of Massacre just as a child soldier who rose above the ranks, who eventually led, they were leading the squadrons before their conscience really kicked in. So it would not have been surprising for him to be a person like Massacre.
Like when I was reading it a couple of days ago, just to refresh myself for just in preparation for this, like from jump, I was like, oh, it's his brother. Like,
no,
like I thought they were like, no, it's the warlord that enslaved them. I was like, he was old to begin with,
right?
So I'm not sure he got the knees for this 20 years later. I mean, like, you know, there's super technology and whatnot, but like, I didn't think it was him. But like, I think if by conventional means, this book is super depressing.
Right.
Like, the constant flashbacks from being a child soldier, enslavement, genocide and massacres, literally every other page or literally every other issue. While this book is good, like, I got to remind myself that's through the eyes of a relatively privileged white man. You know what I'm saying? Like, this would be for like someone who doesn't really know anything about Africa, for someone who thinks Africa is a country, for someone who thinks like there's no, like, I don't know, productive or like modern places in the entire continent, where they think that like warlords just roam around, just like there's like just like a whole lot of Boko Haram going on everywhere.
Sure.
I think, you know, and we're saying this 10 years after the fact, but you know, this was prevalent back then. There are places in Africa that could use a superhero in like in a modern city within the continent. I think this book is very stereotypical of what white people think Africa is. And I think it's, while they're doing their best is probably should have been left to like someone who can actually sympathize with like the goings on of something that's going on. Like, I've always been like a big proprietor of like, if you're writing a character of color or writing someone who doesn't have the same skin tone as you, you should probably just get someone who has the same skin tone to write that book.
Right.
Like Saladin Ahmed is writing Miles Morales right now. And then Brian Edward Hill did his Miles Morales' annual, I think a year or two ago. G. Willow Wilson created who is white, but she's still a Muslim. She created Miss Marvel. I think you should get someone who has experienced that same plight to write the character, so it doesn't come off as such stereotypical. And like, and keep it 100% real with you, Bruce Wayne, Batman comes off in the book as a super white savior, and it doesn't help at all either. Right.
And with just like Bruce's interactions with Batwing, he doesn't see, like, of course it's his Bat family, but he doesn't see him as part of the family. He's like, oh, you're just from my point of view, he's like, oh, you're just an extension. Like, oh, you're always going to need help, so I'm gonna always be here for you. You're always going to be the one that's messing up, so I'm gonna always be here to help you out. And one thing that I tried to compare it to, I don't know, this is a different medium, but I don't know if you watch of course you watch the Static Shock cartoon when Virgil would go over to Africa and he ran into Anansi the Spider. And I was like, oh, that shows like Africa is very progressive and like has their own society, and it's not filled with warlords and like war and genocide everywhere. And I was just trying to thinking of that comparison. And it's like, yo, Static Shock was like 2003, and for them to do this in like 2013, like that's kind of crazy. But at the same time, it's just like the push for diversity in comics wasn't really there to the point where it's at right now. So something like this Batwing series could pass off as passable back then, but I don't think this series would have flew today.
Absolutely not. Like, all shout out to Grant Morrison, one of, if not the greatest comic writer of all time. But we gotta also remember this book happened during the Batman Incorporated era.
Right.
Where like it was like Batman was seeing the franchise everywhere. And even in the main Grant Morrison book, there's not many characters of color, and of the characters of color, most if not all of them are villains.
Right.
Like in the main books, in his Batman run, his Batman and Robin, and the Batman Incorporated, I think the only consistent characters of color in there are like the other Batman Inc. guys, Jezebel Jet, who villain, and Talia al Ghul, Talia and Raish, who are both villains.
Yeah.
The only other one who was a hero was Damian, and he died.
Right.
And not only did he die, Grant Morrison meant to keep him dead. Like he wasn't going to bring him back. You know, shout out to Pat Gleason and Pete Tomasi, because if not for them, Damian would still be dead. But you know, once again through the lens of a white writer, yeah, this seemed appropriate. But you know, he didn't include any other people of color really in his books. So we have to talk about that too while we're doing this, while we're having this discussion. You know,
right? No, for sure. So after the massacre storyline, it moves into Lord Lost.
Mm-hmm.
And that story was I like that story as well, but it kind of it felt like, I don't know, it felt like something was missing with that storyline in general, between like people killing themselves and giving themselves over to a cult, and then you have like a cultist leader who's like, hey, I can save the world. And then one thing that I really didn't like was how easily David succumbed to Lord Lost's powers.
Mm-hmm. Another thing about that, like everything you just said was valid. Everything, but another thing was like it was very like racist African shaman.
Right.
Like he had the whole stick and the not the skirt, but like the I don't know what's the called, like the robe on his waist or whatnot. It was something you would expect out of like the really, really, really old Looney Tunes cartoons or something like that. It was once again, it was kind of OD. I understand, like, and even David as a character, like, I know like the Bat family is really defined by trauma, but like, man, I read Nightwing habitually. I don't remember Nightwing having flashbacks of all the murders he ever witnessed every night, man. You know what I'm saying?
And just for David to like supposedly overcome everything that he's gone through, but still having those flashbacks every now and then, and not getting a night's worth of sleep. There was one point in the series where it was either Dawn or Kia were talking to David. I forgot which one. And he was talking about, or this leads into the second one, the second storyline with the Anils, or the third storyline with the Anils. And he was like, David Anil needs to be arrested. He's a murderer. And then she just shot back, so are you. And I was like, all right, that's kind of like, that's kind of the same thing. Like, it's not like he was a child. This is like a grown man. But I will give Winnick I'll give him props for establishing police corruption throughout his entire run, because that's something that we constantly see. And as the volumes go on, we see it get bigger and bigger, to the point where Batwing's like, yo, I don't know if this can be fixed.
Mm-hmm. Even with that, like even the first issue, they're talking about corruption in the police department.
Right.
And the first thing, I forgot his partner's name, but the first thing she says is the police barely pays a livable wage. In addition to that, these guys are poor. They're all poor.
Right.
So we can't really judge them that harshly for being corrupt, because they don't have any other option, you know?
Right. No, for sure. And we're seeing, like, and the only time it was like him and his partner, they were the only like straight and narrow ones, until like her partner got hit with like, yo, my niece is missing in the Lost saga. She was like, yo, my niece is missing. I have to take this money. And it's like, I was kind of disappointed, like, dang, you didn't have to go down that route. But I kind of see why you did it. But just like over the course of the book, like you can tell like this police force isn't really that effective. So I don't think she needed to do it, but at the same time, I got it.
Yeah.
So basically, if there's one thing I was because you talked about earlier how David should have kept the mantle, and I completely agree, because I definitely did not like the way David gave up on the mantle when just like, because that's something Bruce Wayne would have, that's something anybody else in the Bat family would have never done. Like Bruce, Nightwing, Damian, Tim, they would have tried to figure out a way to be better than themselves. But for David to just break under the pressure, that was something that I wasn't expecting. But I was very disappointed in the way that it played out.
Mm-hmm. Once again, like we touched on a little bit earlier, David has had more room to grow than Luke Fox has. I'll say that for sure.
No.
But Luke Fox, I mean, in next Batman Second Son touched on a little bit, but Luke Fox is born a privilege, man. He don't know no life where he's poor. You know what I'm saying? Right. He doesn't really know struggle. He really doesn't know hardship. He really don't know pain, to be completely honest with you. And even when he was in the Tinian Detective Comics run, he was brought on as like tech support after Tim died. And and even in that book, he sided with the police at one point when Batwoman went to the military, man.
Right.
So yeah, I 100% believe David should have kept the mantle, but like I feel like Batwing is a character that like I was thinking about this earlier. Like, what do I do to improve the character? Essentially, I would kind of make Batwing the Iron Heart of the Bat family.
Right.
Like, just have like some poor kid find this tech in the middle. Actually, take that back. Did you read? I think it was the latest issue of Batman Black and White.
I did not read that.
So the latest issue of Batman Black and White, these two black kids on the hill, which is the hood of Gotham. They made a bat signal on top of a random building to get Batman's attention about people being kidnapped because they call the police. You know, obviously, police don't show up in the hood.
Right.
So these kids got his attention by making this makeshift bat signal. And they ended up like helping him catch Mad Hatter, who was behind everything or whatever. I would kind of want one of those kids to be Batwing in the future, you know?
Right.
Because I mean, we don't touch on it a whole lot. Like we've touched on it a couple more in the last couple of years with like Batman White Knight and Sean Gordon Murphy's Batman series. Batman doesn't go to the hood very often.
No, he does not.
He's not in the hood a lot, and Christopher Priest talked about it a lot too. I think there needs to be more representation for the underrepresented in Gotham. And we don't. I feel like that's something that should be explored. Because once again, Luke Fox is not it, man. He's not.
Right. And I do think, I think that's one of the, that's just one of my glaring issues with just Bruce Wayne as Batman is that yes, he relates to trauma, but after his trauma, he had all of his like struggles were like going and becoming Batman. They were like self-imposed.
Yeah,
and that's just like even with the whole family, like Barbara Gordon and like Dick, like they all have the same trauma of like losing a parent or having to be a type of person, but they don't have like a trauma that you're born with, like, and
they don't know oppression.
Yes, and that's the issue. And even with like Luke Fox, even his pain, like he's an MMA fighter, like you don't have to do that. Like you graduated from MIT, like you're doing this for fun, like you don't. And reading, and when I was reading the Batwing one, he was like, yeah, I got over 50 offers from companies and turned them all down. And it's like, that's like, I don't know about you, but I did not have 50 job offers coming out of college.
I read that and was like, what you do that for?
Right. I was like, 50 offers and you turn down Bruce Wayne money. Like, you know, that money's good because you've lived off of it your entire life. Like you know the fruits of that labor and what it entails and what it brings to you. So why would you like, nah, I'm gonna just travel the world? And it's like, okay. And so just like reading that, like, yes, he hasn't had that trauma, but also David has like had too much trauma to the point where it's like, yo, like, when's enough? Like, like it's just like every step of the way, loses his brother, he basically kills his father in that Warlord coffee for just like, yo, you can't treat us like this. And even though the Warlord was a bad guy, that was still basically his father figure. And so like he basically had to kill his own father at the time. And so it's just like, yo, you have too much trauma, you don't have enough trauma.
Like just to take it back to what you said about like Bruce and the Bat family, we We all remember that scene in Batman Begins when Falcone was talking to him. He was like, because your mama and your daddy got shot, you think you know pain? Like, you think you know struggle? Right. You live in a mansion. Like,
no, for sure.
You live in a mansion. You have a butler. You came here in a Rolls Royce. Like,
right.
Luke Fox don't know. I'm not even saying like a character needs to know oppression to be great, but like, it's hard to relate to a black character when like they've largely been shielded from it. You know.
No, for sure.
It's either largely been shielded from it, or like this man has trauma. Like this man has trauma on trauma. He has trauma squared. Like,
right.
It's like if you multiply trauma by trauma. Like I got trauma. I'm from the bad parts of the city, right?
Right,
bro. I don't know genocide though.
Right.
I don't know massacres.
I think Winnick tried to make. At least David tried to make it a Batwing that his audience was like, he wasn't thinking about minorities at the time. He was thinking about, the main people who probably read comics are white people. Let me make a character that they can sympathize with so that they can have like, this is like crazy what happens in Africa. Like, and so they can just have like a link to that character while still also being away from it.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, and even just like you talked about how Luke doesn't have enough trauma, even the conversation in this series where he's talking with Luke is talking with Lucius, and Lucius is like, I have built this life so that you don't have to struggle, so that what I went through and what my family went through, you guys don't have to go through that. And for you to just throw it in my face to like have the audacity not to work with me, like that's a big insult. And then we even see Bruce Wayne and he's like, I have my reservations about putting Luke on as Batwing, but I'm gonna do it anyway, even though I know his father wouldn't be okay with it.
Mm-hmm. Like, we find out Lucius knows, but like,
right,
knowing he knows and telling the man are two very different things.
Right. And it's just like, it's another thing. Like Bruce was trying to come off like, I know better than you as Batman, as Bruce Wayne. I know better than what you want for your own son.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, so no, Luke Fox's first issue was in Batwing number 19 by the writing duo of Justin Gray and Jimmy Paul Miotti when they started in Batwing 19. And so, and he was no longer the Batman of Africa, but international. And of course, he had more ties to Gotham City.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that I actually liked with just a hardback with David was how he was fighting with was that David or Luke who was fighting with the Talon?
I think it was David. It was funny because Lucius was there, so like one of the Foxes was there while he was fighting.
Right. And I really did enjoy David's interaction with Gotham in general, because that's a whole new environment to him that he wasn't used to.
Mm-hmm.
And so just seeing him there and having him operate more within the Bat family, I would have liked to see that more.
Mm-hmm. Like he had a team up with Nightwing and they fought like a dragon or whatever.
Right.
But like he didn't really interact with the rest of the family all that much, and that's mostly because like they were like 3 continents away.
Right.
But it would have been nice to see him pulled in more, but it's kind of weird, and like this Batwing run lasted longer than like the New 52 Batman Incorporated run, which spawned it. So I figured like when I guess they got to a good wrap up point or whatever, they were like, yeah, man, we're just gonna give it back to Luke Fox or whatever after this. Right. I feel like Batwing is a mantle they created that they really don't know what to do with. But I feel like it's not that hard to fix.
Yeah, no, I think instead of them creating Duke Thomas, that could have been Luke Fox's role. He could have been like not just Batwing, but be the next person who could take the mantle of Batman.
Mm-hmm. Luke Fox would like, My bad.
I know you get it.
I kind of feel like someone needs, because I don't even know what happens to the Bat family. Because even like in Batman comics now, like there's a lot of chaos. Scarecrow's another thing going on. If something happens to Bruce, like there's always, instead of just giving it to Nightwing, they're always like, nah, this person's gonna be Batman. Mind you, don't nobody know who the fuck that is. Right. Even with the future state, like Jace is Batman, right? But the whole Bat family does not talk to him. Like he's such an outsider.
No, for sure.
And I wish he was more integrated with the family. They did do that in the Future State Nightwing books, where him and Nightwing kind of fought their way out of a prison. But I do wish like the Black Bat family characters were more integrated in the story. Signal's usually in stuff, but like we don't really see much of him outside of Future State books now.
Yeah, and I was actually, not to get off of Luke Fox, but I was actually kind of disappointed how we don't see Signal more. Just because I was like really excited, like, yo, he's finally gonna have like a Black Robin. Like he was like in the Robin Wars, he was like one of the main ones. Like, yo, this is it. Like this is like the next guy and for them to drop off like that, I was like, dang, that's kind of disappointed. I was kind of starting to be a fan of him.
Yeah, like when Signal like got on, it was really weird because he's created by Scott Snyder, but yes. He got his mantle during Tom King's run, and like that was like the whole focal point of his Batman Rebirth issue was Signal being trained as the next Batman. But you really don't, like, if you look at Tom King's Batman run, outside of like, I want to say I Am Bane and when Batman and Catwoman go to, I think, Bialya to find Talia, you don't really see a lot of Signal in that book.
Yeah, no, for sure. Do you have any lasting comments about just this Batwing New 52 run? Or would you recommend it?
What I will recommend the Massacre story. It has it's not yet overwhelming because like after that it gets a little bit too much. But the first volume is probably the best. It's kind of the most simple, straightforward version of it without getting like too freaking, like going full comic book companies. I would honestly recommend if you want to read something about black Bat family characters, or really just Black people in general in comics, I would really recommend Batman and the Signal. It's only 3 issues. It came out a little while ago. Batman and the Outsiders by Brian Edward Hill came out, I want to say 2 years ago, maybe. Ended, I want to say, in October. And the last and certainly not least is Black Lightning Cold Dead Hands by Tony Isabella. It came out a couple years ago. Batwing's not a bad book, but like it's a lot to be invested in. It's a lot to get through because like it's just overwhelming. And
it's heavy. It's very heavy. Like I know there are comic books that are super heavy, but especially like Batman, but this is like super heavy. If there's one thing I think they could do to improve, I was watching Batman Bad Blood earlier this week with Luke Fox's introduction into like that Batman animated universe, and I think even though he's still privileged in there, I think that introduction was way better than how they introduced him in the comics. So I think I would watch that as well. I would definitely recommend. I would recommend this run, but of course, just really volume 1 is the only one that's truly necessary. Any volume after that is just like it's a lot to take in, and you have to like if you want to read all through it. I will just before we get out of here, I will ask: are you getting Static that drops on Wednesday?
I have every cover issue, cover ordered.
Okay.
I have every cover ordered. I was gonna get an extra or two to maybe do something special on the Black Variant page. But I'm so excited about Static coming back.
Yeah, and this is only, I wish it wasn't. It's a limited series, right?
Yeah, it's only they're doing kind of these rollouts, these waves. So Icon Rocket, Static, the Blood Syndicate, they're all getting season 1s. They're all gonna be 6-issue mini series, and they'll keep doing it like beyond that. But I'm really excited about all this, man. If you haven't already, go check out the Milestone Returns book that came out a couple weeks ago too. I think it's actually for free on one of the DC apps or one DC website or something like that.
I think it's free on Comixology.
Yeah, so go check that out, please, if you get a chance. I really want this to succeed, man. I've literally been waiting for this damn near my entire life.
Right. So I bought the Static New 52 run and was like, yo, this is actually pretty good. And then never got picked up anywhere else. And I've been waiting since then.
Yep. I feel like the first issue he loses his arm or something like that.
It's like crazy. Like he loses his arm and then like you're seeing him having to fight with one arm, and that's just like insane in itself. But no, I definitely love that series. But once again, I want to thank you, X, for taking time out of your busy schedule to just kick it with me. Do you have anything to plug?
Of course, Black Comic Book Podcast from my homie Van Red on RNC Radio called The Black Variant. We talk about the latest and greatest in comic book news, history, details, all the good stuff. We're currently talking about Loki. We'll probably be talking about a lot about Static this week. In addition to everything else going on around here, a Guardians of the Galaxy game got announced today. I'm not looking forward to that. I'm gonna keep it 100%.
Did you play the Avengers? Did you happen to play the Avengers game?
I didn't play the Avengers game, but I asked Van so many questions about it. And he was like, "Don't waste your money."
Yeah. So I bought the Avengers game, and I was like, "Yo, it was basically like burning $60." I definitely like that's how I felt after a while. I just felt like I just like burnt $60.
See, like I was thinking about copying it because like I'm finishing up Star Wars Fallen Order. Like, I really have nothing to do. I'm bored, right? And I was like, all right, so Black Panther's supposed to be coming out soon, right? I looked at the picture of Black Panther, and I just want to know, how do you mess up one of the most simplest designs in comic book history? Like,
no, it's very lackluster, and like not only is the graphics aren't that good, but the content isn't there. Like the actual content of the game is not that amazing to keep you there for 8+ hours. At least for me, it wasn't.
Exactly. That's everyone I've known who played the game has said exactly what you just said. That the game is it looks nice at times, but like it's ultimately it's not all there.
No, for sure. But just once again, I want to thank you for hopping on. Make sure you are following the 26th and Glencoe Media Network. We are doing daily E3 recaps. So this will come out on Tuesday. So we literally already have 3 episodes out of that. Make sure you're listening to that. We have a few more. We have a few more other things on the pipeline, but I'll talk to y'all about that later. Make sure you're following the brand on all social media networks at 26th and Glencoe Media Network. Make sure you're following me at Flow My Hero on all social media platforms, and make sure you're following my co-host Metro Meta 26 on all social media platforms. And until next time, peace.